You might say, why do we have a wedding picture up there? We're going to talk about Costa Rica. Well, it's because when my niece was getting married, I got to talking with Joel, her new husband, with his grandmother at the wedding reception. And she said they had gone to Costa Rica on a short-term missions trip. And they saw all these young women down there with kids and no husband around or anything. And so they got to talking. They said, somebody needs to start a business and hire these women so they can take care of their families. Well, you know what happens when you say somebody should, and God says, how about you? And so they got home and they ended up remortgaging their home and taking their retirement savings. And they went to Costa Rica and started a business where they would produce very technical parts for navigation systems for airplanes in climate control building and all this. And so they ended up hiring, I think, about 400 people in the process. And most of them were these young women that were able to do the very fine work, you know, but they would teach them English, they would have a little exercise program, and they taught them the Bible. And so it was a real good outreach as well as a profitable business for them at that point. Anyway, she was telling me a lot of this, and she said, well, come to Costa Rica. It's beautiful. You can stay with us. And so I said, okay, that sounds fine. Not ever thinking we would do it because we had never even considered going to Costa Rica. Well, that year it was our 35th wedding anniversary, and we were intending to go to Mexico, but it was so expensive that year to go to Mexico. And so kind of as a lark, I said, Dave, try Costa Rica. We've been invited. And he gets online. It was like $127 one way and $204 another. So he booked it immediately to go to Costa Rica. Well, then that same summer, we were at Summit Ministries in Manitou Springs, Colorado. And every year we saw these group of students come from Minnesota to the camp in Summit. And we appreciated the young people that came, but we had never really taken time to talk with the leaders of the group. That summer, we had lunch with one of the leaders of that group, and he was telling us all about their ministry at the University of Minnesota and at other universities in Minnesota. And finally, I just said, well, Jonathan, you just need to invite us to come and share creation stuff with your group. And he said, would you really? I said, yes, we'd love to do that. And so we got booked to go to Minnesota. Well, while we were in Minnesota, the founder of that ministry took us to dinner the very first night, and he's telling us the history of the ministry on the campus. And in passing, he says, we have a sister ministry in Costa Rica. And we said, hey, we already are booked to go to Costa Rica. He goes, oh, I know Scott would want you to come and speak. So what else do? You know, you're on a 35th wedding anniversary. So you go speak, talk about creation, right? So we got all that arranged. So that was in 2005. That was our first introduction to Costa Rica. And we really enjoyed the time we had there and the beauty and the diversity of the wildlife and the plants that were there. And so, and the ministry that we had on the campus and so on. So we started
churches as well.
Started wanting to go back there. We ended up training Scott. He was a single missionary guy at the time we first went there. And so that's how we first got to Costa Rica. And every time we would go do a short tour someplace, some sort of a trip just to see the area. And eventually we said, well, I think some other people would like us to or would like to come to Costa Rica too and see this. And so we started doing the tours of Costa Rica at that point. Now it went beyond that though, because we had a young man in Costa Rica by the name of Orlando, and he got really interested in creation stuff. He was a physics major, and we went, oh good, he speaks Spanish. We can train him and he can teach the creation material, right, in Spanish. Well, that was really good until he ended up going to Taiwan to study for his master's degree. he did take our DVD set to Taiwan with him, and so he was able to share some of our materials there. But, you know, we were still looking for somebody to do the teaching in Costa Rica. Well, come to find out, Orlando, after he got his master's degree, he ended up going to Israel to get his PhD in physics at one of the universities. And they told him, well, we want you to do 2 PhDs, one in chemistry and one in physics, separate PhDs. And so here he was studying. I think within 2 months he knew the Hebrew language. This guy's a genius. And so, you know, he was already teaching at a messianic school there, teaching science. Well, we just happened to be back in Costa Rica, and he would happen to be there. You know how God works. One time, and so we got together with him, and he says, I want you to come and teach at this little messianic school.
And other churches.
And in some churches. And so I asked him if he knew of a pastor in Israel by the name of Ron Cantor. He says, oh yeah, he pastors one of the churches I go to. Orlando was going to 3 different churches at that point in time. And so he was able to get us into 2 of those 3 churches. He didn't get us into the church that Ron was doing, but we did go visit there. While we were there visiting, I got to talking to the other pastor's wife, and she was from America. And I asked her, where are you from? She said she was from Colorado Springs. And so I said to her, where, you know, what church did you go to in Colorado Springs? She said, oh, it's just a tiny little church up in the Black Forest. And I said, did you know a lady by the name of Dawn? I gave her the last name, and she said, yes, I knew Dawn. You know who Dawn was? Dawn was Joel's mother, the mother-in-law of my niece. And I told this pastor's wife, well, it's because of Dawn that we are here in Israel right now. And
there he is.
Yeah. So God directed our steps. We had our slides all were translated into Hebrew and, you know, our English on there. You know, we couldn't follow the Hebrew at all. And so we had to trust that they were getting things right. Well, one of the churches we ended up going to was a Spanish-speaking church in Tel Aviv. And when they came up with the Spanish on the slide, we went, we feel like we're home, because we had been translated so often from English into Spanish. So God directs the steps, and we love it just to see. I love to see the way God networks things together. Just absolutely love it. And so that's how we got to Costa Rica in the first place. We've been going back almost every year now. We do the tour, and then we do teaching at universities and schools and churches and wherever there's a seminary down there. We've also done a lot of training for naturalist guides to help them to incorporate creation into their guiding. And others in the area, there's an eye doctor that we've trained, eye surgeon, and professional translator, and others that we've been able to train in Costa Rica to handle the creation message down there. So God has put together quite a good team for us in Costa Rica. So tonight, Dave's going to talk about design in Costa Rica. It's a little twist on the design argument that we often do with creation science, but specifically aimed at creatures finding Costa Rica.
Right. Okay. So I may as well, as long as you have the video set up right here.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I can move it.
Okay, it doesn't matter to me. So anyhow, what we ended up doing, looking at great design tours, and we did the next tour that we have is March 2 to 12. And it's just an amazing place for a photographer. Okay, I love it there. And but anyhow, when we look at design in Costa Rica, let's put it, the whole thing, what we see in Costa Rica, into a biblical perspective. And that biblical perspective starts with beautiful design, God's creation, right? And then, of course, you get hammered at the university if you talk about design, and they say, then how come there's so much death and struggle in this world, right? How come there's disease, etc.? Well, you have to go to the next chapter 3, and you see there's fall and death, right? And it's a complete model. It's not just design, but it's also what happened to that good design. And then things went from bad to worse, and God said, stand back, there's going to be a flood. We see evidence of that flood in Costa Rica as well. As next thing we see is the dispersion of people groups. We're going to find out that they weren't dumb, by the way. They were very intelligent people. Tonight, of course, the focus is going to be on design. And keep in mind that it says in Isaiah that God formed this earth to be inhabited. To be inhabited. That means every little niche and cranny has something in it, right? And God does inhabit his earth, and we see that for sure. You know, Costa Rica isn't a very big country. You can put 10 Costa Ricas into the state of Texas. But you're going to end up with a lot more greenery and et cetera than you have now. But anyhow, but so small of a country, but it has 5% of the world's biodiversity. That's a pretty big chunk for a little country there. Why? Well, first of all, is location. Notice at the tip of that arrow where Costa Rica is, that little country right there. I don't mean in that bigger square, but that little country right at the tip. And notice on both sides you have ocean. That's got to make a difference, right? In a climate and what it's going to be. And so, yeah, you have, oh, beautiful, beautiful beaches on both sides of the country. And so that's really great. But we also have something else playing into there, plate tectonics. There are moving plates that are going on that are actually centering in this section of the world right there. You can see 5 or 6 different plates right there. And so what do you mean? One plate coming up over the other plate's going to cause some uplifting mountains, isn't it? And so we see the highest spot, we don't go up this high on our tours, but 13,000 feet high right at that. That's pretty high. So you have ecosystems that will take you up to the top of a mountain, as well as all the way down into the jungles, right? And the coastal regions. And so plate tectonics plays a big part in the country of Costa Rica. One of the things it does, think about all the volcanic activity along the margin of these plates. And so we see a lot of volcanics as well. And like some of them, like OAS, you still see it steaming. And then you have Irazu, where you actually get up above it, drive our bus up to there, and we get to see the crater of Irazu. And that's another volcano that's fairly recent. Arenal, in 2005 and 2006, we can actually see the bombs coming from Irazu rolling down that mountain. You know, kind of a molten, down it goes. And so it was kind of a neat spot. And that is Mount Ararat, or Arenal right there. That's Arenal. And think about all the green around there. Reason for so much green, volcanic deteriorating soil is extremely rich. Plus you have the zone and you have the water, the temperature is perfect for greenery all over. Amazing amount of flowers too, okay? The plants of Costa Rica have 12,000 species of vascular plants. A lot of people love the orchids, right? Did you realize there's 1,400 species of orchids alone in Costa Rica? Whew. Interesting design feature. Each one of the orchid species has its own fungus that's extremely important in the orchid's propagation. They're all different. How did that happen? All of them different. Different niches, different design features there. one of our staff a number of years ago wrote a book called The Hand of God. And in it, he talks about a certain number system. It's called the Fibonacci sequence for those mathematicians out there. Okay? Anyhow, it shows that all over the universe, you see these spiral designs, okay? Or the length to width ratios are almost always the same perfect ratio. Well, the numbers that are associated with it will give you the spiral on a sunflower, the distribution of the leaves on a plant stem, spiral arm galaxies. It's all over. Okay, we see that spiral design. Lanny Johnson called it the hand of God. He said that's God's signature there. You look at a banana stalk, what do you see? Again, spiral design. Butterflies of Costa Rica. There's 9,000 species of moths and butterflies. That's a bunch, right? That's a bunch of them. And I love the butterflies. They're so colorful, so plentiful. There are monarch butterflies down there. Some of you have heard the people talk about the monarch butterfly. They have a migration all the way from Canada all the way to Mexico. Takes 2 generations to get there, right? And then the 3rd generation, called the Methuselah generation, makes the long trek all the way back to Canada. Who ever think monarch butterflies, flimsy things, right, could migrate that far, but they did. In Costa Rica, we find monarch butterflies too, but they don't migrate. I think they like it there. Okay, they don't feel like they have to go anywhere. One of my favorite is the morpho butterfly. And I remember the time I heard a presentation, and a friend of ours was giving it on the amazing design of the morpho butterfly. And when I knew I was going to go to Costa Rica, I wanted to see one. Mary Jo began praying, "Oh God, let them see a blue morpho up close." Well, there it was. There, it got really close here. It's on my arm. Then it went to my beard. And God is saying, "Is this close enough?" Blue morpho butterfly, by the way, is not blue. You say, what? Yeah, no, it's not blue. There's the underside of it. And if you look at the top of the blue morpho, the blue is not a pigment or anything like that, but the scales of the blue morpho aren't blue. They're clear. They're clear. And what happens is the light coming in comes all the way down through those scales, through a bunch of layers called laminae, okay? And what that does is screen out all of the light in this light spectrum, except for the color blue. And now the blue is not just reflected back, it is actually magnified back. And it's called constructive interference. When it actually magnifies it, it's like the projector. Boom, projects it up there. It's so bright that an airline pilot from 30,000 feet in the air can see a group of morphos on the ground. That's how bright it is and intense the blue. It's amazing design, and those particular laminae, basically the spacing, they have to have about 1/8 the distance there, which is 1/8 of the wavelength of light. And so you have to have that. There are 1.4 million layers of these layers or laminae, and they have to be perfectly arranged in order for this to work. All right? That is amazing. Now, here's the thing. How did that happen by accident? Doesn't it look like somebody designed it? To me, the blue morpho is an amazing evidence of design. I remember this last spring, we just finished our creation tour of Costa Rica, and afterwards we started speaking at some of the churches and different places. in schools as well. And here I am in one church talking about the amazing evidence of design of the blue morphle. And I tell the audience, the next time you see a blue morphle butterfly, I want you to just stop what you're doing and praise God for his amazing, amazing design and his creation. Just exactly then, a blue morphle flew over the congregation. God's timing is perfect, isn't it? And everybody stopped and went, whoa, isn't this amazing? Yeah, it was so neat. I wish that happened every time. Okay, and no, I did not let it out of a box. Okay? It just happened. God told the butterfly, fly through there. Anyhow, so there are 250 species of mammals. Of course, everybody likes to see the monkeys, right? But there are other animals there too. People like to see. One of the big ones is the sloth. We enjoy seeing the sloth, and they're actually pretty friendly little creatures. Okay, and but look at those big claws. Don't big claws mean it's meant for ripping flesh? That's what we are told all the time, but not necessarily. Those claws are used to be able to allow the sloth to hang upside down on a branch and go to sleep because there's a locking mechanism in there. They could actually lock it, and it's not going to go anywhere. Okay? Pretty unique set of claws on that thing. 900 species of birds and 600 are permanent residents. And I love looking at the scarlet macaw. And the reason is it's big and I can see it. It's bright. All right? Bird watchers are looking for these little tiny birds there. I'm looking for the macaws, okay? And they're so gorgeous. And basically, we get to see them regularly down there in Costa Rica. And I love that one. These were posing for me, okay? But they mate for life. Now, how does that help evolution? How does that help evolution? No, it doesn't at all. Not they're supposed to spread their genes, right? That's what Darwin would have said. No, but they can live for approximately 65 to 80 years old. That's a long lifespan on a bird. Of course, in that amount of time, they're going to pick up parasites, aren't they? What do they do about it? They're their own natural doctor. Okay, they'll go to a cedar tree and eat the poisonous cedar sap. Well, that kills the parasites. So how do they know to do that unless they hear from God better than I do? Okay? Yeah, very likely. And so that's what they do about those parasites. Anyhow, Quetzal's one of my favorite birds for trying to take pictures of. And it's great. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous bird. What did Darwin say about beauty and how beauty arises in the animal kingdom, right? How do they do it? He said it's a mating advantage. The prettier birds are the ones who attract the mates, and they get more and more and more and more beautiful, right? It sounds great. Nobody tested that. Nobody. It was always assumed ever since Darwin. And finally, they decided to test it. They looked at peacocks. Now, peacocks aren't native to Costa Rica, but peacocks have gone now everywhere around the world because people like them. They're beautiful. And so they did the research. And they did 268 observations of peacocks. And they found out the splendid males did not attract the females. That was not the control. All right, something else is. All right, so by the way, the macaws, male and female, have the same coloration too. So that doesn't fit the Darwin's mantra of natural selection, right? It doesn't do that. Here's a toucan. The bill is about 30 to 50 of the size of the whole bird. And these are good sized birds, okay? And, only about 5%, 1/20th of the weight of the macaw is in the bill. So that is not a big, heavy bill for crushing seeds, not at all. It's useful for other purposes. And here's what National Geographic said about it. The brilliant colored bills of toucans aren't just eye candy, okay? It says rather they play an essential role in helping the bird control their temperature. And what happens, they find out that the toucan bills, quote from the article, are highly engineered thermal regulatory systems. What do you think of that? Any engineer would say, wait a minute, this type of system doesn't happen by accident, do they? No, it's well designed, it's engineered. And you'll see a toucan put its bill under its wing, and there's also the blood is pumped various distances up into his bill to get the right temperature for the bird. It's amazing how they do that. I love hummingbirds there, and I can photograph as many as I want down there. And they're so cooperative. But the interesting thing about their wings will flap at 50 up to 200 times per second. Try that and see how far. You're not going to do it. And what happens is it also expends a lot of energy with all of that flapping, right? And so what do? You have to have plenty of energy coming into your body. So the hummingbird can sip 2 times its body weight per day of nectar. Wow, that's amazing, huh? Now, when you hear somebody that you're talking to in a conversation, oh, they say, I eat like a bird. Ask hummingbirds? Yeah, and it's amazing the actual, the tongue. You go to Creation Magazine, a great article on the hummingbirds, and the tongue that works as a micro pump, not a suction. They're not just doing that. It's a pump that's pumping that nectar into their body, okay? And it's just amazing. Think about all the energy. There's got to be some metabolic heat, and then maybe with the wings flapping, frictional heat, right? What do? How do you control that? It turns out the airflow from the flapping of the wings actually acts beautiful fan, cools the outside of the bird. But then they have a heartbeat of 500 to 1200 beats per minute. Ooh, that's a lot. And respiration of 250 times per minute, right? That's faster than your dog laugh, right? Anyhow, that cools the inside, all right? That's amazing. And you say, they fly so fast, etc., or the bats, they fly too. Don't they have any enemies? You're going to find out they do have. Right? Now, they've also found a lot of fossil hummingbirds. You know, the interesting thing about the fossil hummingbirds, they're 100% hummingbird. Really. I like what this one reviewer said. The amazing thing about this fossil is that it is essentially a modern hummingbird. My mind's a little blown. It should be a half hummingbird, half something else, right? Then he said this, where the whole hovering tribe of hummingbirds came from, well, remains up in the air. I love their humor, too. Bats, again. There are 2 bats there, I hope you can see. And you all know about the design of a bat and all their echolocation and all that kind of good stuff. Do you realize in the fossil record we found over 1,000 bats? Now one of them shows an intermediate form. Nothing. It's not there. And so what's her enemy? What's her enemy? Remember the heat that's produced by a hummingbird, snakes can pick up on that. All right? In fact, the viper, if we think about the viper, fall, right? Death and struggle, the fall. Okay? Even the viper have great design. Okay? They have long fangs, but they hold them back up inside their mouth. Okay, they're like retractable, right? Otherwise, they're biting themselves on the lip all the time, right? But not only that, they can see, but they can also have even a second way of seeing, and that's infrared receptors, okay? And they could actually detect a difference in temperature of 2/1000th of a degree. That's how sophisticated that is. It's amazing. But that's what actually killed a lot of rattlesnakes up in Wyoming, is the temperature difference. And what they had is they, for a while, had drill holes, and when they had drill holes, they didn't cap them. And the rattlesnakes would come down, and what do? They sense a little temperature difference because it's warmer down there than it is outside, okay? And because it's warmer, they think, aha, there's food down there. They crawl down in there and all the way down. And that has cleaned out a lot of rattlesnakes in the state of Wyoming, okay? Anyhow, then they also have spider webs that actually can, the poor hummingbirds get caught in occasionally, like the golden orb one. Now, in that particular picture, you see a spider there, don't you? See that? What's this? Viper. Both in the same picture. And you don't want to hug trees in Costa Rica. Yeah, unless you walk all the way around and make sure there's not a viper around there. But the thing is, I've only seen vipers twice, and that was within 20 minutes of each other, two different vipers, okay? And that was on the Caribbean side of this country. And that was clear back in 2005, I think. Never saw another poisonous snake. They do have them, but we just don't see them, which is, I'm glad, okay? Think about that spider. That's a golden orb spider. Now, golden orbs have a really good way of spinning webs, these great big webs that you can see. And they're interesting. They're studying it because they're going to make military jacket and bulletproof vests out of spider web. Why? Because the spider web is 5 times stronger than steel. It's also elastic, like a rubber band, stretchy, and completely waterproof. And they're finding out it's useful for a whole lot of things. Okay, it's so strong, you can take a spider web that's diameter of the web, if you can make the silk this big and just wind it around. Do you realize a pencil width spider web? Now let's make a big web, put it across the sky, 1/4 inch diameter cord of silk. You know how strong that is? So strong that a airplane would run into that web and would be stopped in midair. That's strong, isn't it? I don't want to be on that airplane when that happens, but it just shows you the strength of that. And because it's stretchy, that's why it's being used for so many things. Why would it be so strong? Well, it's not just one little fiber that you're seeing. That fiber is woven. You look at the back side of the spider with the scanning electron microscope, and you find out that this is actually weaving threads together. Now, weaving factories don't happen by accident, okay? Not at all. And within one web, you'll find different spinnerets giving you a different composition of silk, right? And some of it is sticky, but that's not good for the spider. He needs a runway. go up and down and round. So he has that particular type that it will not stick on him. And, yeah, I think I see design, don't you? And evolutionists say, you can't tell if something was designed. Maybe millions of years of slow and gradual evolution to produce these things. You're not going to produce a weaving factory, even if you had millions of years, right? All right, now they made a silk cape out of spider silk, but it took 1 million golden orb spiders to make it. Okay, they all donated, right? Their spider wing. I think they let them go. They didn't kill them. I think they let them go. They ended up being normal spiders, and but it's not economically feasible, is it? So now they're making synthetic spider silk. And the reason for it is you can mass produce that, okay? And yet they're copying the spider's design and what he uses for specific proteins in order to get that very strong silk. And so now they can make bulletproof vests. All right, dolphins. They spend a lot of time in colder water, sometimes in hot water. So it's going to need to keep warm in cold water. So how would a spider, a porpoise, stay warm? First of all, he swims over to Walmart and he buys a coat, right? No, that's not going to work. No. So what he ends up doing is he puts on a thick coat, but that coat is blubber. He's got a thick layer of blubber. But the problem is that's too good of an insulator coat, and he can't take it off. So when he swims into warm water, he's going to bake to death inside his own blubber layer, and because of all the heat that's going to be generated there. So what's the solution? It's in the dolphin's fin. The dorsal fin there acts just like the radiator of your automobile. The blood is pumped up into the dorsal fin, circulates round and round. It's almost in contact with water. That cools the blood, and then the rest of the blood, that part of the blood goes back into the body and cools the whole system. Pretty unique system, isn't it? And Discover Magazine, talking about dolphins, says it this way. By all rights, and they're going to explain it, right? Here, now they're going to give you explanation of this great design. He says, by all rights, life in the sea should leave a dolphin baked, crushed, and sterile. This graceful mammal avoids such a fate only by slipping through the loopholes in the laws of physiology. Did they really say anything here? It's just slapped a coat of paint over this great design, right? So there's no explanation given. And they're happy. Must be a natural way of doing it. That's the basis of naturalism, by the way. All right, so anyhow, you can find several different species of reptiles, and I like these great big iguanas, and some of them you can find 2, 3 feet long. They're pretty good size, even longer. And so they're fun to see, and I can just imagine one of these things that is 30 feet long. Wouldn't that be an amazing show? Anyhow, there's another lizard I really like called the Jesus Christ lizard. Why? It can run on water. It does. It takes 20 steps per second coming and running across water. Jesus Christ lizard. And there's a particular way of design allows a little bit of an air cushion in between that keeps him on top of the surface of the water. Anyhow, what are you looking at? What's that? Take a guess.
Seaweed.
Huh?
Asparagus.
Asparagus.
Celery.
Uh-huh. Close enough. How about the foot of a gecko lizard?
Oh, wow.
Actually, each one of the pads has like a couple 100 million fibers that in that pad, and allows the particular lizard to attach to a plate of glass in the ceiling. It can hang upside down. And I'll tell you what, if you try doing a pull-up on that lizard, you could do it, he wouldn't let go. Uh-huh. Of course, the lizard's not gonna look like much afterwards, but it's that strong. Now, what happens is, it's not suction there. There are, with those fine, fine fibers, a molecular bond that is made between that fiber and the plate of glass, a molecular bond, and it is directional. And that's why when you see in slow motion a gecko lizard running across the ceiling, he is actually going back and forth. When he's going back, he's releasing those bonds. Okay? Pretty neat, huh? How did he develop that by accident? And what can we do with that? Well, they're now looking at that, trying to make a man-made substance that'll basically look just like the gecko foot. And they're going to call it Spider-Man tape. All right? Sticky tape. And they're hoping to make this fiber. Rock climbers would love it, I'm sure. Anyhow, but they now have made it. And they have like 300, 260 million fibers per square inch. What are they doing? Copying God's design. All right, why? Because God's design is great. Why not copy it? And so, sure enough, crocodiles live in brackish water. That means you get ocean tide coming in. It's very salty. And for a freshwater creature, there's a problem here, right? What do you do with all that salt? Well, if you look closely, you don't see it here, but the eyelids actually will concentrate and secrete the salt. Get rid of it. It's an interesting system there. Not only that, you find trees that do the same thing. The mangrove swamp. Mary Jo loves when we take the one boat up and we go viewing the mangroves. There's so much wildlife in there. And yet, the trees are different too. Those leaves are constantly raining down. Why? But because here it is, it's not fall season. The leaves actually filter the salt, and all of it is concentrated. Then they drop those leaves, and so it's like now freshwater, right? That's great. So all the leaves have small filters in them. Shorebirds do the same thing, and I like those shorebirds. They do very much the same. This one is actually fishing. He's fishing. He'll take a little twig or a little object, maybe the pebble, and drop it at the water's edge and sit back and wait. Why? Because he's fishing. Because that thing is coming into the water, little tiny minnows come up to be able to see what's going on. Maybe there's some food here, right? And now, boom, they find out instead of getting a meal, they are the meal. So this is a bird that goes fishing, and a greenback heron. Here's another one, a bee eater. How'd you like to eat bees? Well, get stung, don't you? Well, here's your instructions. I saw this on a sign for the bee eaters. They have them down in Costa Rica too. But he said, once you have caught a bee, wrap its head against a branch until it stops moving. Next, rub the bee's tail against the branch to remove the stinger and venom sac, swallow whole, or feed to chicks. Okay, that's how they did it. What got into that plant? An ant. The leaf cutter ants actually come in. They will actually take all kinds of bites out of these leaves, and now they haul them down a path, and you will watch this path of ants carrying these leaves that weigh as much as the ant. Okay, they're strong guys. And did you realize how strong? But they also communicate with each other. Scripture what tells us to go to the ant. What does it? Go to the ant, you sluggard. Okay, thank you, God. And learn. We were at an ant display one time. It's like a big old, narrow little thing. You can see the tunnels, you can see the ants at work. in one of these displays, we watched the ant and was kind of going across a little log, a little twig, across a ravine, right? And is walking across there with its load. As he gets across that load, this ant slips a little bit. Now it's hanging with one leg on the log and still holding its load, okay? And I know he had to say, help, help, because we could see at the other end of the log, other ants drop their load, come back over the log, and help this other ant. I was amazed. Could just sit there and watch this for a long time. But what are these ants cutting all these leaves for? They're farmers. These are farmers, and what they do is they take those leaves, bring them underground in their hole there, and what that's going to do is rot. It's going to attract and produce a fungus. The fungus secretes sticky stuff that's sweet. As you know, ants would like that, right? So it's farming for the sticky substance, and it knows to feed the fungus the leaves. Interesting. What's your enemy if you're an ant? Ant eaters. They could eat 25,000 ants per day. So, wow, that's a bunch. So, what can they do? Well, some ants make good friends with the trees. Some of the trees have big thorns. Thorns and thistle, sign of a fall, right? The apple god can use that as a design too. And what happens is it can crawl up there, make some of their nests, etc., up in the trees. And the anteater doesn't climb that tree. I'm sure not going to climb it. Are you? Look at those thorns. Some of those thorns are that long. And some of them are shorter, but they're still sharp and pointy. And some ants actually make big long tunnels, and especially the termites. They'll make these little casings, and that'll be their highway up to the top of the tree. And there they will build a nest way up there, okay? Mud nest. And they're safe from anteaters, etc. Sometimes you see them hanging from the branches, but you do see them up there in the trees. Anyhow, 175 species of amphibians. I like the frogs. That's 85% of everything you see. The frogs are so beautiful. We know one in Colorado. That's it. All right. And but I love taking a picture of that guy. He was so photogenic. Okay. And yeah, I showed this to a professional photographer. He said, not bad for an amateur. Anyhow, you know, some of the frogs are so beautiful. Others, they're beautiful too, but don't kiss them. They are poison dart frogs, okay? They are poison dart frogs. And what happens is they secrete something on their skin. It's very poisonous. You get it in your bloodstream, it will kill you like that. But the thing is, I don't have to worry about them because they only secrete that when they are highly agitated. And the native people found out that they could take the frogs, put it into like a vessel, and kind of squish them down a little bit. Boy, that would agitate a frog. And it begins to secrete the poisonous material. And eventually, it has enough to make a poison that you can dip your darts into and makes a poison dart. And that was very lethal when the natives were using blowguns. Okay? Very lethal. And what happens, it works on the sodium gate, it's called in the medical. And what that'll do is give you heart arrest. Okay? And so, but I'm not worried about them in Costa Rica. We're usually not agitating them at all. And I love the blue jean frog there. You can see why they call him the blue jean frog. Yeah. But there's really neat. You think about it and say, why doesn't a poison dart frog poison himself? Well, operates with that sodium gate is a string of amino acids called a protein. Okay, in this case, it's a sodium gate protein. And if you change one position in position 1584 out of 1836 beads in the string of the protein, just that one change keeps him from poisoning himself. Isn't that interesting, huh? One change. Think about when you think of proteins. You have in your body 200 amino acid chains, proteins, but you might have proteins with 4,000 beads in the string. Everyone has to be right in the perfect position. Otherwise, it might be lethal to you, or it could be of no good whatsoever. Now, let me ask, what's the chance that you're going to get them all lined up? Not very much, not very big at all. All right, so again, evidence of design there. Beauty is another evidence of design. We have an artist guy, and he loves beauty, doesn't he? And I see beauty all over, especially in Costa Rica. That's why I think I like it so much as a photographer too. We see even in the crabs intense beauty. Okay, yeah. Naturalism says this. Everything in the universe can and must be explained by strictly natural processes without God. Got that? That's the basis of naturalism. All right? And that is a worldview. And so every time I would give an evidence, whether I'm talking at the university or public schools, oh, they said, yeah, naturalism can explain it. Naturalism can explain it without God, they say. And here's what they say. We can imagine how mutations coupled with natural selection might refine or produce certain features. All of them that I talked about so far, plus others. Okay? Have they tested that? No, there's two words there that are not scientific. Imagine and might. All right? Those aren't scientific words. I'm going to say evolution is not science. It is a philosophy posing as science. It's a basis of the naturalistic worldview. And when they say you can't tell if something was designed, I said, oh, I think so. I'd say that painting did not come as a result of an explosion in a paint factory. Would you agree? So you can tell design, right? Even what you are looking at this design with, you can tell is design too. Okay? Evidence of design is amazing down there. One of the guys we were training in creation as well loves the eye. He's an eye surgeon. Okay? He could talk to you for an hour specifically on the design of the cornea. And it's going to be in such technical detail that it'll go right over my head. But really, he loves working and talking with people about the creation and design of the eye. And that's kind of what people say. When you open your eyes, you can see the design. Romans 1:20 tells us that, right? It says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, even his eternal power and divine nature are clearly seen, being understood through what was been made. So that what? They are without excuse if they deny that. Okay? All right. Then they said if they deny it, professing to be wise, they became fools. Wow, that's quite a statement, isn't it? Yeah. You don't have to go all the way to Costa Rica to see that design. What you do when you come down to Costa Rica with us is you see design just by looking at your little finger. All right? Yeah, are you aware of that? Look at the end of your finger. Whew. You can't see them, but there are millions and millions of cells inside just the end of your finger. Your body has 24 trillion cells in it. That's a bunch. Every one of these cells has an electric motor in it, or a machine, or 5 or 6 or 20 different machines that are so important in order for the cell even to be a living cell. All right? And you have to have machines that'll make energy, like this one over here on the right. That's your energy producing machine. And for you technical people, that would be the synthase machine, okay? And you're going to produce energy. And this thing, when it's done, will be a motor that'll spin at 9,000 revolutions per minute. And when it does, it's producing energy for you. Okay? Are you with me so far? I'm making it quite simple here. And so how do you get it? Well, the very first thing you do, you need to code for the proteins that's going to make this machine. And what codes for it is your computer language system, your DNA. In order to utilize the section of the DNA that's got a code for the right proteins to go in here, first of all, you have to split the DNA, unwind it, and then split it. Then you need a copy machine to copy the piece of instructions that you need specifically. All right, you probably all know all of DNA and messenger RNA, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, but that's a copy machine is what it is. Now you have to call UPS to deliver the instructions into the ribosome, which is a piece, the little polka dots on the outside of that. This instructions go into the ribosome. You know what the ribosome does? It's a manufacturing assembly plant. It takes the instructions, and what it does is, okay, one tells me what amino acids to put in the right spot to make a string of beads exactly, and every bead is an amino acid. You have to have every one in the right spot. So chink, 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 chink. In the case of the sodium gate, 1,800 of them, all perfectly arranged, okay? That's what you have to do. And when you're done, you've got this long string of amino acids, okay, called a protein. But it's not going to work yet in a machine. You have to fold it. Now you got a folding machine to fold it to a precise shape. And once it's totally folded to the precise shape, you have to call UPS again. And you say, hey, UPS, come, deliver this to that part of the cell that's going to be our energy producer. Well, what's UPS? Here it is right there, Grysen transport. And here, this little transport is carrying a bag of proteins to deliver to various parts of the cell. Okay? Now, keep in mind, the cell is small, but these pieces are molecular. They're really small, aren't they? And they're actually going to deliver all that stuff. Well, what's it delivering it on? You see this? Did you know there are highways in your cells? Amazing highways called microtubes. The tubular construction. And a UPS is going to run down this thing at approximately 1,200 kilometers per hour. I'll bet you that's faster than you can run, right? But that's how fast it's going inside the cell. And there are 32 of them that are going to be delivered to the site where you're going to have this energy producing machine. Now, all this supposedly happened by accident, and this wouldn't even be alive without all the pieces working, right? So there's no mutation and natural selection that can possibly be involved here, right? Nothing. It's got to be there all at the same time. To me, that's amazing, amazing evidence of design. Now, I went into this in a little more detail at the University of Minnesota a couple of falls ago. And after we're done, we had an atheist, one of the most focal atheists in the state of Minnesota at that university. He stood up and said, I came here to hear evidence of design. and you haven't given me any faith. And if you don't give me evidence of design right now, I'm going to throw up all over the chairs in front of me. We had an engineer in the bag who could recognize design when he saw it. And he stood up and said, "Give him a bag." Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, why? He wasn't willing to look at that design. Do you know what? He's committed to the philosophy or worldview of naturalism. Everything can and must be explained by natural processes. So I don't care what I throw at him, he won't take it as evidence of design because he's already ruled it out, right? So it's our worldview that keeps us from seeing the evidence. All right. Well, look at the origin of life itself. We know scientific observation. Life comes from life, correct? That's on page 9 of the biology text. You know what they say on page 16 of this one we're looking at? However, the first life came by accidental processes of chemicals getting together just exactly right. Oh, really? That's the evolutionary speculation. And here's what one of the university professors at Colorado State University said. He said, can we accept design? He said, no. He says we should reject, as a matter of principle, the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of mutation, natural selection, in this case, chance and necessity. All right, that's what he's saying. But in the same breath, he also said, we must concede that there are presently no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical or cellular system. Only a variety of wishful speculations. That's really the case, right? Dr. Scott Todd, who is leading the charge against intelligent design, said, even if all does, it is not naturalistic. You understand? People are getting chained to the idea of naturalism. They can't look out of that box. I think thinking is loud. All right? I see evidence of design. I'm willing to go there, but not somebody who's absolutely committed to naturalism. As I keep saying, evolution is not science. It's a philosophy posing as science. All right? So every one of these things that I'm talking about, what's the answer? If I want to give you the spider spinnerets, or your eye, or the morphle butterfly, here's what we can say. We can imagine how mutation and natural selection might refine systems. Imagine and might are not scientific words, okay? And then naturalism, talking about the eye itself. Perhaps an early cell, billions of years ago, could sense light. Then it is conceivable it would be on its way to becoming a human eye. Steal a line out of Princess Bride? It's inconceivable. It's not going to happen, right? So I don't care how much you imagine and think, might this, it's all naturalism, it's not science, right? It's just not. But would mutation and natural selection even work? According to Dr. John Sanford, the primary axiom of Darwinian evolution, that evolution proceeds by mutation and natural selection, according to him, it doesn't work. It's absolutely wrong. And in fact, he went on further. It's wrong. It's not just implausible. It's not just unlikely. It is absolutely dead wrong. And this is based on his research, by the way. Quantitative, very solid research. This whole primary axiom is not just a false axiom. It is an unsupported and discredited hypothesis which can be confidently rejected. Okay, so the skeptic, why so much depth and struggle of God's good design? I think you have an answer already tonight, don't you? What's the answer? The fall. Okay? Yeah, struggle entered into that beautiful fall, didn't it? So we see, when we look all over Costa Rica, you see that evidence of design, but something marred it, scarred it. That was the fall, wasn't it? We see only a piece of the beauty and of the design that we would have been able to see, say, in the Garden of Eden. Okay, but we do see in Costa Rica, see evidence of design and fall, etc. But we also see some of the evidence of the other two. Like, how about the flood? All right, we see evidence of the flood right here in this layer, right here on one of the beaches we go to. We can see all these things trapped in the flood. We see evidence for that. We see evidence of God's promise after the flood, not to destroy the earth again that way, right? And but we also see dispersion. We find out people were designed as well, right? Look at the ancient peoples of Costa Rica. They now realize they use the lost wax art of casting metal to make beautiful jewelry. They weren't dumb. They appreciated beauty there too, didn't they? We look at some of the pre-Columbian people, what they actually made, and you see, whoa, they're quite the artists, aren't they? And they made these huge spheres as well, rock spheres, perfectly round. That girl is, I'd love to say she would be a believer. I don't know yet. Okay. We've had a chance to talk to her quite a bit, but she was almost worshiping those big rocks. She was definitely a tree hugger, okay? She really was very much new agey. Sweet kid, sweet kid. But we found out they're big spheres too. All right, that's a gentleman, a taller guy on the right, used to be the president of the Twin Cities Creation Group. He came down to our Costa Rica tour. But you're looking at an 8-foot diameter sphere. Why? You know, think about it. They're in a jungle. In the jungle, there are a lot of termites, right? You don't want a wood sign if you want to have a map and a signpost. Get a great big rock and whitewash it, okay? And that would be your way of being able to direct people through a jungle environment. That would be possible. And also, the most prominent chieftain also had the biggest spheres. Okay, they did. Anyhow, we'd see so much beauty throughout Costa Rica and other places in the world too, not just Costa Rica. And you think about it, why such beauty? Keep in mind the beauty we're looking at. This is the destroyed world. It was destroyed by the flood, wasn't it? It's marred and scarred by the fall. This is the destroyed world. But what is the hope, we can say? God makes beauty out of destruction. He's a powerful God. We think about it in our lives, our kids' lives, etc. God, work something in their heart. Make beauty out of destruction. That's what we think sometimes, right? God is powerful enough to do it. In Psalm 147, verse 4, we read, God numbers the stars. He calls them all by name. What does that tell you about God? Romans says we can see something about his character. We find out that God is powerful. But that's verse 4. You know what verse 3 is? A lot of people don't read that one. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up all their wounds. Right? What does that tell you? He's a caring God. And he's powerful enough to do something about the hurts in our hearts and lives. That is the kind of God we want to serve, isn't it? And worship. And we see that. And that's one of the things we enjoy doing when we go down looking at various things. We see so much diversity. We see diversity in the people. We see diversity in the plants, the trees, and the different root systems, in the animals we get to see. Wow. We ask this question, why so much diversity and beauty? Not only the location, not only the climate, but I think God puts the beauty there for us to enjoy. That's simple. He wants us to be able to look at it, enjoy it, take pictures of it, right? I think so. And so we see God is an artist, another one of his attributes, right? He's an artist. And he loves lots of beauty, okay? And we see it. And every little niche happens to have various life zones, all the way from the orchids, but there's fungus that I was talking about there on your right. Or the blue marble, by the way, that's not blue. And but look at this right here. Here's a tree. Do you realize there are several ecosystems in that one tree? In Costa Rica, you see it. Because of the moisture up there, there's a different ecosystem on the various branches of the tree. And it's fun. You can actually see a frog that'll lay its eggs, the tadpoles hatch, now takes the tadpoles up in his mouth, climbs up the tree, and or one of these particular type of a plant, and it collects moisture, and it'll deposit his tadpoles in there until they are totally adult. Now they can crawl down the tree, go back into the ponds, go back into the streams. It's a pretty unique system they have down there. Okay, God is an artist. He loves beauty, and I enjoy taking pictures of his creation. Okay, I think you're going to see that. All right, so I also find when I'm down there, God paints even the sky. You have gorgeous sunsets here too, don't you? But God really paints the sky down in Costa Rica. I just love it. Okay, I was taking pictures of this one every minute. I just came a better picture. The next minute, a better picture, all the way through, right? It's just amazing evidence of design, both in the sky and in the living creatures, and what I'm seeing there in Costa Rica. All right. So I'm going to put a little commercial here. Do you know of students who would like to be trained to be able to handle the creation versus evolution controversy and take it to other people? We have a training institute there in Grand Junction, Colorado, Discover Creation Training Adventure. And we want to train people, this one, maybe a whole year or 9 months, let's say. And we'll train them to be able to handle the objections that the evolutionists have been throwing at each other. How to handle the worldviews, how to answer this one, how to respond to a loving God, okay, all that. Or we'll train people on a short-term basis. They may only have a week or two out of the year. And we'd be glad to train them on how to be able to utilize this and on various ages. They don't have to be high school kids coming out of college or coming into college. They could be retired military, okay, and have a lot of years to impact other people. Or you can take it online with us too, and we can train people to be able to handle this material. If they're in town, we just have to have a training ministry center half block from the university. Okay? Oops. Where did that come from? Oh, we'll go to. There it is, right there. We have remodeled the upstairs into student apartments, so we have the room for them to be able to come live with us. We can disciple them. We're living in community with them, and it's great. It's a good way to be able to help these students be able not only to impact others, but to impact the university half a block away. Okay, that's part of it, right? And come to our creation tour, Costa Rica. Some of the stuff is just so gorgeous, you'll want to see it. okay? And, or Yellowstone, we give tours at Yellowstone National Park. You know what you see in Yellowstone too? Amazing design with so many of the creatures. What about that hot pool you see? It's amazing when you look at what's going on there. How can some of these microorganisms live at the boiling temperature of water? They do. The various colors you see are different types of organisms at different water temperatures. How do they get from one pool to a pool almost across the world? We see the same microorganisms. And did you know the grizzly bear has such a sense of smell? It can smell something like a carcass of an elk 20 miles away. All right? You know what one of the grizzly bear's favorite foods are? If not people. Get this, moths. One grizzly bear, based on the scientific study now, they're able to see in one day could eat as many as 30 to 60,000 moths per day. Woo-hoo. It's amazing. You see them up there in the rocks sometimes, they're pulling them over. Why? Because the migration of moths, they're deep down in there, and what they're doing is they congregate there, reproduction, and the grizzly bear just scarfs them up. Okay? They love them. It's very high fat content. I've also watched a bear digging wild yams just before hibernation. Very nutritious. Okay? Didn't even pay any attention to the tourists there. Trying to take their picture, getting closer and closer, and the ranger said, "Get back, get back." Amazing design. But you see, not only in Costa Rica, but if our eyes are open to it, the design is all over, even in your backyard. Okay? So discover creation, but don't worship the creation. Worship the creator who made that creation. Okay? All right. Any questions that you might have? I answered them all, didn't I?